How? How can I expect you and I to live in two worlds at the same time? We are creatures of habit. We always inhabit the same place. We return to the points of comfort. We are limited in that way. We aren't souls, we are bodies. Or are we? Who are we? What are we truly? Let's take this to the next level. Are we bodies that have souls, or are we souls that are in a body? Are we capable of being more than creatures of habit? Is it possible for us to transcend our own limitations? Even the limitations of time and space? Even the conceptual limitations of being in one mindset and one mindset only? Is it possible for us to hover in two worlds at the same time? How? How can we possibly shed those chains that tie us down to a limited existence and become part of a greater God? Let's delve into a very deep teaching that is offered in Hasidus. I'm going to frame the teaching with two stories. Very interesting stories. And on the surface, they sound so similar. But when we break them down, we'll find how different they are. The first story happened to the great Reb Naftali of Rapshitz, known as the Rapshitzer. When he was a young child, this smart, wealthy man came up to him and says, "Ingele, little boy," in Yiddish, "if you tell me where God is, I'll give you a golden coin, a golden rendel." And the little boy said to him, "If you tell me where God is not, I'll give you 2 golden coins." Smart boy. Wise response. Where is God not? After all, God is everywhere. What do you mean, tell me where he is? He's everywhere. Where isn't he? Here's another story. Rab Mendel of Kotsk, known as the Kotzker, he asked his Hasidim a question. Where is God? And so they came up with all kinds of answers. God is in the heart. God is in the shul. God is in the Torah. God is in the mitzvah. God is in the Rebbe. God is... And every time Reb Mendel said, no, that's not true. Finally, they gave up and they said, so tell us, Rebbe, where is God? And Reb Mendel said to them one simple answer. God is where you let him in. Powerful. Where we let him in. Because God doesn't impose himself. He gave us free choice and he wants us to use our freedom to choose him freely. Let him in, he's happy to be there. Don't let him in, he'll stay away. But if you let him in on his terms. Don't try and change him to adapt to your environment. Letting him in means adapt your environment to change to him. 2 stories. Where is God? Where is he not? Where is God? Where you let him in. What's the difference between the 2 stories? Why couldn't Reb Mendel's Hasidim simply answer to Reb Mendel, where is God not? The difference is, one's a nursery rhyme, and the other is a deep and profound Hasidic teaching. A nursery rhyme, God is here and God is there, God is truly everywhere, up, up, down, down, God is truly all around. Reb Naftali Rapshitzer was all of 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old, and he knew what every single child knows. Where is God not? God is everywhere. But that's an easy thing to say until you grow up and you realize that he's everywhere, and that includes in me. It's easy to say he's in someone else. God is in you, therefore you should adapt to God's ways. God is in the tree, therefore the tree should do God's bidding. God is in the floor should do God's bidding. God is in everyone and everything else. But I walk my own path. I do what I like. I never even stop to think if God is in me. Says Reb Mendel. It's fine and good and dandy when you're a little kid, but as you grow older, you have to let God in. God has to be inside you if he is to be everywhere. Because if he's everywhere but inside you, then it's not true to say he's everywhere, because everywhere includes you too. The question is God everywhere? If the answer is yes, then he's inside you as well. If he's inside me, then why am I doing things that I want and he doesn't? I mean, he's inside me. Why am I taking up space for myself? Why am I occupying head space and heart space for my own interests? If God is everywhere. In other words, if God is everywhere, then there's no space left for me. If God is everywhere, then I am nowhere. If God is everything, then I am nothing. But what am I then? That's a deep and profound question. Ordinarily, we come to the table with an awareness of our own existence. That's beyond repute. I exist. Of course I do, because I feel myself. I know I'm here. Does God exist? That's a good question. It's a debate. It's a question that philosophers can discuss. Theologians, philosophers, rabbis. But I don't know. Is God here? I never saw him. I mean, he never came to my table for dinner, did he? But now we change. Where is God? Where you let him in? If God is everywhere, then number one, God is here. Number two, am I here? That's a question. Because philosophically speaking, if God is everywhere, then I'm not here. There's no space for me. But I feel myself. So what am I? Obviously, I'm not something separate from God, because there's no space for anything outside of God if God occupies all space. Then what can I possibly be? Here's another story. A story that will bring to life the idea of God is in me. What does that leave me as? What does that say about what I am? A man once approached the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory as he was walking from his car to the shul in Brooklyn, New York, 770 Eastern Parkway. He walked up to the Rebbe and he asked him a question. Ordinarily, people gave the Rebbe a wide berth, lots of space to respect his privacy, so no one was close enough to hear what the student asked. And the Rebbe's response was equally quiet, and he smiled as he responded and pointed around him, like this, like that, and all around. And the man very earnestly asked again, and the Rebbe's expression grew very serious, and the Rebbe responded and pointed to his chest like that. The man stepped back, the Rebbe moved forward, the Rebbe went into his office, the man went into the shul, sat in one of the back benches and broke down into bitter tears. You could just imagine that all the other students in the yeshiva were dying of curiosity to know what had gone on between this man and the Rebbe. And so they waited until he quieted down. And then he turned to them, wiped his eyes, wiped away his tears, and said, "I'm sure you're bursting with curiosity. Let me tell you what happened. I am a student at a university, and I won't mention which, and I had sincere questions about God. First and foremost, where is God? I discussed it with the rabbi there, and as much as he tried to explain it, it never really touched my heart. The rabbi said to me, if I can't help you, I'll send you to a rabbi who can. Go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York, and ask him your question." So I did. Off I go to Brooklyn, and I ask the Rebbe, where is God? And the Rebbe smiles and said, everywhere. He's in the tree, he's in the birds, he's in the branches. But that didn't do it for me. I already knew that pat answer. It's easy to say God is everywhere. I needed something deep and existential. And I said to him, Rebbe, seriously, I mean, where is God? And the Rebbe grew very serious and he said, if you mean it that way, God is right inside you. And when he said that and looked into my eyes, something just snapped within me and melted completely. And I felt that I was full of God. It was so overwhelming that I broke down into tears. I had never experienced this before. For God to be everywhere but not inside me leaves me outside observing God from the outside. If God is inside me, then I'm part of it too. I'm observing it from the inside. And I suddenly felt filled with God. There is no me. There is only God. And my thoughts are God's thoughts being streamed through my mind. And my heart is God's heart being pulsed through my heart. And my limbs are God limbs functioning through my body. And my body is God's body responding to the impulses of my soul. There is only God. He had heard such words from others, but he had never heard it from someone who actually lived it, who was a Rebbe himself. When we're in the presence of someone who lives this way, who is filled with God, it's a lot easier to be inspired and uplifted, to be able to feel that way ourselves, and to truly recognize that if God is everywhere, that includes me, and that makes me nothing. How can I be nothing? What does that mean? Let me explain what we're talking about. You see, when God created the world, he created the whole of the world out of nothing. There was nothing, and from that nothing, he made something. According to science, everything left to its own devices eventually returns to its original point of equilibrium. And so indeed, if we were nothing before we became something, then our point of equilibrium is nothingness. Left to its own devices, we should ultimately revert to what and who we truly are, which is a state of non-existence. What keeps us in existence? It's a constant force of God's energy, his creative energy, that plays upon the nothingness and makes us something out of it. Should God stop creating a something out of the nothing for even a moment, the something would revert to its true self, which is the state of nothingness. This is analogous to you breathing, blowing air onto a bowl of water, the surface of a bowl of water. And as you blow into the water, you'll form a depression in the surface of the water. The question is, what is that depression? Is it a depression in the water, or is it the byproduct of your breath upon the water? And of course the answer is it's a byproduct of the play of your breath upon the water. And the proof is the moment you stop breathing, the depression immediately disappears and the water fills the depression. No one has to destroy the depression. It immediately ceases to exist. God wrests us out of our state of nothingness and continuously turns us into a something. In this state of something, what are we? Do we truly exist as a something? Or are we a nothing being forced out of its natural state, its true state where it should belong and feel most comfortable in, and being forced by a force outside of us into an alternate state, an artificial state of something? If the latter is true, if we are artificially transformed into a something and it's not our true state, then we remember even now that our external appearance as being a something that exists separate and outside of God is an illusion. The truth is that we are nothing, and only God is the true existence. And due to his word, he turns us into a something which is truly not separate and apart from him. He covers and fills all of existence, including the somethings he makes by his choice. And that's who and what we truly are. If this is how we see ourselves, then we are not constrained by the finite limitations of the human experience. Then we are truly and wholly part of God above. And just like God can inhabit two spaces at once, so can we inhabit two mindsets at once. At once feel the fact that we belong inside of God as a true part of God, because without God there walks nothing. But for the grace of God, I am nothing. And at the same time realize that the very same God actively pulls me away from my natural state of nothingness, the state for which I constantly and earnestly yearn through my soul. And he turns me into a something, and that's what I need to respect. I can't escape God's intention that I remain in this world to fulfill his wish. So in the final analysis, where is God? Where I let him in. And who am I? If I let him in, then I am part of God. Let me close with a very nice and interesting story that happened to me when I was a child. I was walking to shul on Shabbos morning together with my father and my two older brothers. And my father was evidently explaining something along these lines to my older brothers, because I heard him say to my brothers that you are God. That struck my fancy. As a 5-year-old or maybe younger, I turned to my father and I said, "What? I'm God?" And my father's response was succinct. "No," he said, "you're not God. God is you." Thank you.
Click subscribe for more videos that educate, inspire, and make you think.